Well, g'day, Ed. Welcome to the very first show, mate. It's great to see you.
Oh, great to see you, Bob. Boy, I don't know about you, but I'm really excited. I didn't sleep at all last night waiting for this. Really exciting.
It's funny, I don't get excited by very much in my life, but, we've been having these conversations for a couple of years now, and I thought it was about high time that we brought this thing together and actually put a show together, create a channel together, and have some fun with it. What do you say?
Oh, absolutely. You know what? And I'm really glad that we settled on the title. That we've been talking about the title. We should name the channel now for a couple of weeks, and I'm glad we finally settled on. What we settled on? It was everything you wanted to know about women, but we're afraid to. No, unspoken truth. That's it. Unspoken truth.
That's the same thing, isn't it? It's one and the same.
So everything you wanted to know about everything, and we're gonna cover it. Yeah,
we're going to cover everything here on planet Earth, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to help you to understand and get a better view of the world. We've got some really cool software that we're playing with here called StreamYard. You might have heard of it. If you haven't heard of that before, I encourage you to take a look if you're a YouTuber. So we're going to navigate our way through that for the first couple of shows. It might be a bit clunky, so you're going to have to bear with us there. But let me just switch the screen and show you what's coming up on today's show. And let me add that to the stream. So there we go. So this is what's happening on today's show. The first part of it is the introduction, of course. Ed's going to talk about one world currency. I'm going to give us an update on the war in Ukraine. And we're going to round out the show with some cool stuff talking about SpaceX. So I'm really looking forward to that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put this show out on Spotify as a podcast as well. So if you can't access your YouTube in your commute for whatever reason, you'll be able to get a daily update from the Unspoken Truth via Spotify. As soon as we finish recording the show there, I'll go ahead and upload it into Anchor, and it pulls through into Spotify within about 20 minutes. So it's pretty fast. So around the same time every day, you can expect that to be happening. We've also got to set up a Telegram channel and a Rumble channel as well, and we'll be active on Twitter also. And the reason that we do those things is because here on YouTube, you may get censored for saying the wrong things, and we don't want to do all of this hard work and create all of these shows only to find that we get censored and we get shut down. So no matter what happens, we're going to be available over on Telegram, on Rumble, and on Twitter. And make sure you subscribe over on Spotify and where you listen to your podcasts. So that'll be happening in the next couple of days, and all the links for that can be found in the description. And any links that we mention in the show and any of our shows, if you're listening as a podcast, you'll be able to find by just clicking open the show notes. And likewise for the YouTube channel, if you've got something that's you're looking to see there, you can have a look on the show notes, and everything that you want is going to be there. So make sure you reach out to us if you've got any questions about the show. So at the top of it here, Ed, I just want to give the audience a little bit of a insight into the reason why we created this and what the whole reason behind it is. And I want to start off by just mentioning to the audience that I asked you a question the other day, and I said, hey, Ed, it's funny because that's the name of your YouTube channel. I said, hey, Ed, is there anybody else that you talk to about all of this geopolitical stuff? And you kind of shook your head and said no. I'm like, come on, man, you live in the United States. There's 200 million people there or something like that. Surely there's somebody else that you could talk to. It's some crazy Aussie on the other side of planet Earth. And you were like, no, I think it's important that men, in actual fact, have an outlet to have these conversations and these discussions as well, because it's something that's not really spoken about much. If you've got something that's inside you that you want to get out and you've got to get it off your chest, you've got to find a creative outlet to do that with, whether that's with your mates down at the pub drinking a beer, or that's with your mates over a video call like we're doing right now. I think it's important to have that. What do you reckon, Ed?
Oh yeah, and on that topic, it's kind of funny because I've got two sons, two adult sons. They never watch my YouTube videos. They don't get half the time. So did you watch my video on this? No. So hey Ryan, hey Ben, just in case you watch it. So my older son owns a pizzeria in New York. Called Randazzo's. If anybody of you out in New York, go into Randazzo's on Ditmas Boulevard in Brooklyn and tell him you saw the old man on YouTube. He'll get a kick out of it. And my youngest son, boy, he doesn't care about any of this stuff. But I'm trying to drill it into their heads. When I'm at Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and I start bringing up the modern monetary theory, but our eyes start to roll, and
Oh
yeah,
my God, he's on that path
there he
again.
goes.
Here he goes again. Are you
Yeah.
like the old guy sitting on the porch and then back in my day it was much better and it was like you're not that guy yet,
Yeah,
are you?
right. Yeah, yeah, that's what I should do. Go out onto the porch in the rocking chair, so and talk to myself, and that's what it feels like sometimes. But I'm really passionate about the kind of things that we talk about. So you're right. It is kind of therapeutic when I get a chance to talk to you, because I have a chance to get it out. It's a good outlet, and the idea that we're going to be doing this very frequently now. Almost every day, 4 or 5 times a week. It's going to be really good for my mental health. And it's just, when you find a subject that you're passionate about, whatever it is, the more esoteric it is, the more important it is for you to find somebody you can talk to about it. Because if it's important to you, you want to be able to share it and flush out ideas. And, I promise you, my friends, we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. So it's not just going to be about economics. It's
And
not
it's not just about war either from my side.
right. Yeah, right. Yeah, we're going to be talking about all sorts of crazy stuff. So, so I hope that you tune in just out of curiosity to see to see what we end up talking about. And there's no end. I mean, man, I think we could do a show every day for a year and not run out of things to talk about.
Well, the world is such a crazy place these days, and I think you're 100% right. What I do is I look at my YouTube habits, right? And YouTube's a big part of my life because I'm helping people build YouTube channels and communities around that, and I'm also doing that myself. But from my user perspective, when I look at my feed, the things that I'm looking at, I'm a bit of a news junkie, and I don't know if it's because I'm addicted to bad news or the fact is that I just enjoy knowing what's going on in the world because I can't put my finger on it because when I talk to other people about it, they're like, "What do you even care, Rob? Why does it even matter?" But I think what matters is the structure and the foundations of our society, because everything that you have in your life and your world has been a product of thousands of generations of people that have gone before you. And here we are today talking about we're on the precipice of World War III. That's what I'm going to be talking about. You're talking about complete and total control of the financial system, and then rockets that are going to take us to another planet. For heaven's sake, like we've come so far as a human race, and we tend to focus on the things that don't really matter, and we're focusing on the things that we can't control. And that's what you and I are talking about. We can't control any of this, and it doesn't really matter in our day-to-day activity. But it's the foundation of humanity and a foundation of who we are. And I love that big picture thinking. I love that geopolitical stuff. I love learning about how the world works. And I'm really looking forward actually to bringing on some experts to clarify a few things for me because I'm a little bit of a slow learner. And I'm looking forward to bringing on some authors and some other experts in and around the topics that we discuss. So it's not just going to be me and Ed here, folks. It's going to be a whole bunch of different interviews as well. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you in the audience as well. What do you think, Ed? Have you got something you want to add there?
Oh yeah, thank you. Look, it's about being curious, right? I think the reason why you and I are so interested in so many different things is because we're curious, and everyone should stay curious. The day when you're not curious, the day when you don't care about what a topic, that's what's the point of getting up in the morning? I mean, stay curious. I triple majored in college in history, English, and ancient Greek. Why? And there wasn't a business class anywhere in the mix.
It wasn't an economics class to be seen.
Look, I was kind of an academic snob. I looked down on my business major friends, but looking back, I mean, I wanted to study the loftier thoughts of the world and the philosophers. I wanted to travel the world, man. I was interested in history, and I've never really lost it. I've always been curious. And I like learning things that other people don't traditionally know about. I got all sorts of, I guess, what a lot of people would consider trivia about things, but I find it interesting. I find it fascinating, and in the course of conversation, when you could throw in little bits of information that no one's ever heard before, and you get a little, it's kind of like, I've had some teaching experience in my lifetime on many different levels. And one of my favorite sounds in the world was when you see that light bulb go off and people connect that, that's I didn't know that. It's kind of a satisfying feeling, and hopefully out there over the course of our conversations, we can create a lot of ahs out there. Ah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the idea behind the name as well, the unspoken truth, because the media has a narrative that they want to perpetuate and they want you to think in a certain way. They want you to behave in a certain way. And there's this whole big, strange groupthink going on out there in the world, whatever society you're part of. It doesn't matter what country you're coming from or what culture you're coming from. There's a narrative that's actually controlling you as an individual. And I think the really important thing is that we pull back the curtain and look behind what they're trying to say. A lot of what they do is meant for the greater good of people. Let's face it. It's not all bad. It's not all, governments are not always bad. They do a lot of really great things. And if the people that ran the governments weren't where they were today, we wouldn't have the infrastructure or the society that we actually have. But that's the paradox of leadership. Is I think we're governed by fools, but we're run by really super competent people. At least that's the experience that I've had here in Australia. And you probably have that in the United States as well, to a certain point. And there's always up until a point is where it's at. All right, let's throw to you, Ed, for the first segment here. You're going to talk about CBDCs. Hopefully we can get some people in the audience be going, oh, that's what it means. Oh my God, that's why this is such a nightmare. So I'm going to pull myself out of the stream here. I'm going to hand it over to you. So go for it, mate.
All right, thank you, my friend. Okay, Rob Russ, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for that kind intro, Rob. Yeah, okay, so today I wanted to talk about, as my inaugural, subject matter, I settled on this brand new CBDC that's being rolled out. Now, CBDC, for those of you who don't know, CBDC is an acronym for Central Bank Digital Currency. And if this is the first you're hearing about it, start learning about it, because it's going to affect your life very dramatically, very quickly. These CBDCs, Central Bank Digital Currencies, let's start with a baseline, okay, about what they are. Now, central bank digital currencies are going to be an electronic form of our fiat currencies. They, in effect, want to replace our traditional paper currencies, in our case, the US dollar, with digital coins, digital currencies. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's cool, Ed. I mean, the government is catching up to the private market. So well, thing is, don't confuse the government's version of a digital currency with the private version. The only real cryptocurrency in the world is actually Bitcoin. All the other guys are not really cryptocurrencies. It's kind of a misnomer. But in the case of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is non-programmable and it's decentralized. Okay, meaning that no one entity controls it. There are 21 million Bitcoin. That's all there ever was. It's all there'll ever be. It's decentralized. Nobody can change it. It's immutable. It's an immutable code, right? However, with the government digital currencies, they are both programmable, okay, and they're centralized. Let's start with centralized. Centralized means the government is going to control it. In our case, it's going to be the Federal Reserve. Okay, every major country out there in the world is developing their own digital currency, their own CBDC. Ours is nicknamed the Fed coin. Right, and the Federal Reserve is going to be in charge of it. They're going to control it. Okay, so it's centralized. Okay, so that's one big difference between that and Bitcoin. The other big difference, and the more insidious difference, is the fact that the government coin will be programmable, which means they can determine what you spend your money on. And also, they're going to know exactly what you're spending your money on. Your money is no longer going to be transparent. You can't take your $100 bill and go down to the store and spend it. They want you spent using their Fed coin, so they're going to know what you're buying. And I'm going to show you a couple clips here that kind of will kind of illustrate, the dangers of this. So I'm going to start with a clip from the president of the BIS. The BIS. There's a little aha moment for you, a little reveal for you. The BIS is an acronym for the Bank of International Settlements, okay, headquartered in Basel, Switzerland. Now, this is an evil outfit, and it's headquartered in Switzerland. These are the people who brought us the bail-in laws. That's a subject for another video. But the BIS stands at the pinnacle. If you think of the world financial system as a pyramid, we're at the bottom. Okay, we're the customers. We buy and sell stuff, right? And then above us sits our banks. Okay, your local bank, and above your bank sits in our case, the Federal Reserve, that's our central bank. Then above the Federal Reserve, internationally, you have the IMF, and then you got the BIS. So the BIS is the tip of the spear in the world financial system. And they are largely dictating a lot of the rules that's being passed down to all other central banks and then filtering down to the regular banks and then to us. So you have unelected officials at this bank, a very powerful bank in Switzerland, making decisions that affects our lives. And to illustrate this point, I'm going to show you a clip of the president of the BIS himself describing to you how the CBDC works. Bear with me a second here. Here we go.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
All right. So there you had to hear it. Absolute control. Those were his words. They're going to have absolute control over your money. All right. So if that doesn't send shivers down your spine, I don't know what will. So they don't want your money to be anonymous. And he said, yeah, so if you have a $100 bill, we don't know what you're spending your money on. That's a problem. Look, that for centuries has been the basis of the modern economy, is our ability to be able to spend our money the way we want. Anonymity was very important. They want to take that anonymity from us. And to drive that home, that point even further, I'm going to show you a clip here now from one of the fellows at the IMF. And listen to this gentleman.
And finally, the third way we think CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program, to create smart contracts, to allow targeted policy functions. For example, welfare payment. For example, consumption coupon. For example, food stamp. By programming CBDC, those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized. For example, for food. So this potential programmability can help government agencies to precisely target their support to those people who need support. So that way can also improve.
Okay, so there you go. Programmability. For them, they see it as a virtue. They want to be able to control your life. Okay, so the reason why I'm showing you these clips is to point out to you that I'm not making this stuff up. Okay, they're telling us, for those who are willing to listen, for those whose ears are open, they're telling you exactly what their plan is. All you have to do is pay attention. Okay, so every country is going to develop their own CBDC. In our case, it's going to be the Fed coin. And then above them is going to sit this brand new token that's just been created by the IMF and associated with an outfit called the UDMC. And that is called it's going to be called the Unicoin. Let's see if I can pull up the announcement here for you. Okay, so the Digital Currency Monetary Authority, DCMA, launches an international central bank digital currency. Okay, now this currency is going to be called the Universal Monetary Unit, right? But the nickname for it is going to be the Unicoin. This coin is going to sit above our digital currency. So again, So again, every country will have their own CBDC, and then sitting above them will be this universal CBDC that we can exchange our CBDs for. So this was just announced last week, about a week ago. The use of this Unicoin. That was the final piece of the puzzle. This is all happening very, very quickly, and that last piece of the puzzle it gives them the runway, gives them the green light to implement a worldwide CBDC program. Now, everyone has to be worried about this because our freedoms are directly affected by this. They are methodically taking away our freedoms. If you want to, they have those coins and they're programmable, they can dictate what you spend your money on. If you buy too much steak, they can turn off your coin. Okay. If you want to buy a car that actually runs on gasoline, they can turn off your car, or they can say no. They're going to control what you can spend your money on. They're going to see what you're spending your money on. And if you're a bad citizen, you might not be able to buy that plane ticket. This is what we're going for. This is communist style lifestyle that we have coming our way. And I don't know, is there anything we can do about it? Well, there are some things you can do about it. Small things to start with. I don't know whether it's going to be completely avoidable. The first thing you do is number one, reduce your exposure to your bank. Number two, put some of that money into gold and silver. And number three, establish streams of passive recurring income. Those familiar with my channel, they'll know that's been my mantra on my channel for quite a while. And also, if you have an elected official, in the next election, ask your official, ask the candidate how he feels about CBDCs. And if he's okay with it, find someone else to vote for. All right, that's one little thing you can do. Is there any kind of a pushback? You might be saying, oh, Ed, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. If this is such a big deal, why isn't anybody pushing back? And you're preaching to the choir on that one. Why isn't anyone pushing back? Partly because the media have been giving these people cover. I mean, again, how many of you out there even know what CBDCs are? How do you know? Our cash, have you noticed it's hard to get cash out of your bank, and it's hard to do any business with cash? It's the old boiling frog syndrome, right? They're slowly they're making you become comfortable with the idea of not dealing with cash. But this is their end game. But there's a little bit of pushback. I'll show you a little clip here from Representative Emmers. And actually, I'm from Minnesota, and he's from Minnesota. Too bad he's a Democrat, but I'll give credit where credit is due. So let's listen to what Mr. Emmers has to say. Actually, there's a couple clips in here, so just bear with me. They're all really good. They're short, but they're really good.
But in the end, the ultimate objective is to essentially wipe all of the banks out so that your bank will be the Federal Reserve. Everything will be centralized. And again, this is not really about the money, although of course it is. This is about power and control, because the government, such as it is, will have access to all of the information related to every single transaction you make.
As Sanders is urging the state legislature to block the use of the digital currency in Florida if it's ever implemented.
This is protecting your autonomy. This is protecting your freedom to make decisions.
Governor Ron DeSantis took aim at a new currency the Biden administration is exploring.
Are you interested in giving these economic central planners more power over our economy, more power over your daily life and your economic activity? And I answer that question, double hockey sticks, no.
Today, I want to take the opportunity to talk about an important piece of legislation that may or may not yet be on your radar. Last week, I introduced the Central Bank Digital Currency Anti-Surveillance State Act to halt the efforts of unelected bureaucrats here in Washington, D.C. from stripping Americans of their right to financial privacy. Digital assets in the digital economy are the future, but the Federal Reserve should play no role in developing a central bank digital currency, or otherwise known as a CBDC.
Okay, and I have a bunch of other clips. I got pretty enthusiastic here with our first episode. It's on all sorts of stuff, but I'm hogging the limelight here, and I'm afraid that Rob is over there saying, "Come on, Anderson, finish it up already." So, Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you. Any thoughts on what I just covered?
I got to unmute myself before I speak. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you so much for that, Ed. I think it's a really important topic that's just not discussed. And I remember having this conversation with my brother. So my brother is kind of another outlet that I have for myself, and we talk about all these sorts of things all the time as well, which is pretty interesting. But what I said to him, no, this is going to take ages. The government is so slow to move. There's just no chance that they're going to be able to actually do something quickly. And then he reminded me, he said, that's not true, Rob. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, think of COVID. Think of how quickly the government just clicked their fingers and locked the whole country down. And if the politicians want to move quickly and they want to get something done quickly, they have absolute power to do so. It's actually not true that you live in a democracy. It's not true that you have some say in how the place is run. You have no say in how it's run. You have no way to actually to make any difference. Unless you're one of those elected officials, the only way that you can make a difference is to pass legislation and help people or push back on that legislation like you just showed from those clips. So, it's a scary time in history, but it's also a pretty exciting time in history, because when there's rapid change like this, I believe there's rapid opportunity as well. So it's all a matter of perspective. You've got to figure out what you can do to try and capitalize on these opportunities. And if there even is an opportunity, and if there is no opportunity, what can you do as an individual to position yourself so this is not going to impact your life? And to your point, get your money out of the bank, get some gold and silver, and create some passive recurring income for yourself. However you do that, that's the thing that's going to position yourself. So no matter what the government does, no matter what rules or regulations they enforce, you can rest assured that your financial position will be solid, because you've got gold and silver. There's no exposure to the banks that are going to go away or not going to go away, because you've parked all of your money into gold and silver, not all of it, but most of it. And then if you've got passive recurring income that you don't have to swap your time for money for, using big tech as well is what I would say. If you can use big tech in some way, shape or form to create that passive recurring income for yourself, because big tech's not going anywhere. YouTube's not going anywhere. Rumble's not going anywhere. Facebook's not going anywhere. Neither is Instagram or Twitter. So if you can figure out a way to make money in and around these platforms or using these platforms, I think that that's something that can help you to develop a little bit more security. What do you think?
Yeah, well, 100% agree. I got to find somebody I disagree with, man. This is people out there going to think these guys agree on everything. But no, I agree. How can you argue with that? The underlying, if you trace back, if you follow the breadcrumbs, you can trace everything back to this climate change nonsense, and that'll be tough for a whole nother video or how it is nonsense. It is a scam. But listen, the CBDCs, they want to control what you can spend your money on, and they're going to limit it. They want you buying electric cars. They want you eating bug-based food. They want you not spending so much on electricity. Everything's going to be about your carbon footprint and how they can
let me push back on you there, Ed. Yeah, because we don't disagree on much, but let me push back. Imagine if you were Elon Musk and you had your team sitting around the boardroom and, okay, we're ready to go to Mars. Fast forward like 15 years into the future. We're ready to go to Mars. We're ready to get set up. The first settlers have gone there, so to speak, and now we're ready, because he wants to put 1 million people on Mars, right? And we want to put 1 million people there. How are we going to set up the financial system over there? Because we can't do that with fiat currencies. It won't work, because every fiat currency that's ever existed has collapsed. We can't dig gold out of the ground on Mars because we don't know if it's there or not. And there's probably some other minerals that we probably could dig out of there to back whatever currency that we had. So the only choice that you would have in that case is to create some sort of credit-based system, a little bit like the movie we were laughing about it yesterday, Total Recall. He goes to Mars and he has to pay for the taxi, and he's paying with the credits. So how would you do it if you went to a place like that? And the answer is you have to do it with computers, and you have to do it with blockchain. And because blockchain is the immutable ledger that can't be changed. But the nefarious part about it is that if you can program that money, meaning I give that credit across to the teller to buy whatever I'm trying to buy, and they go, sorry, your card doesn't work. You can't eat a piece of steak today. Well, okay, cool. I'll eat a piece of fish instead. No, can't eat that either. Well, I'll eat a piece of chicken. No, can't eat that either. And you're kind of going down the scale of things to suddenly you have to eat bugs. That's the only thing that's available to you, or vegetables. That's the only thing that's available to you. Well, that's where it's really nefarious. But my question to you is, how else would you do it if you went to Mars? Well, and that's what these people on planet Earth right now are trying to do. They're trying to recreate a financial system as if we were somewhere else. And in some ways, there's some good things associated with that because they're trying to fix and solve the problems of the past. But the fact that it's run by the 0.00001% of society makes it nefarious because they're the ones that will control everything. If it wasn't controlled by these evil people at the top of that food chain, then maybe these things wouldn't be such a bad thing after all. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in, is it?
Well, no, I mean, look, the monetary systems do work in theory if you stick, but when you get people with agendas that come who rig the system, listen, there's a little thing called Bitcoin. I'm talking about a pure financial system. Don't wait, that's it. There's 21 million coins. That's it, and it's immutable. They can't add more. Well, the real big problem with our fiat system is that after we went off the gold standard, all bets were off. They could spend as much money as they want because there was no constraint on the spending. I don't know why we even bother paying taxes. Why are we paying any taxes, Rob? They could just print more money. Why should we, why pay taxes? Just print more money. They just sent $100 billion to Ukraine at a push a button with no accountability. There you go. Have some fun. So there's no accountability. With the people in control. The idea that you can just print more and more and more, though, so that you have a new Mars system, they say, all right, well, yeah, it's going to be digital, but you know what? It's going to be immutable. We're going to issue X number of tokens, and that's it. That's all there will ever be. And you can spend it any way you want. We're not going to control what you spend your money on. So if they just adopt a few key principles relating to how the financial system works, of how commerce operates, and they're honest with it and they stick with it and they're not corrupt, you're all set. So that problem is easily solved if you have legitimate, responsible people developing the system. So you can make it seashells like they used to have, as long as it's a fixed number of seashells, right? And
well, they solved the problem with Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is a solution to all of that. But the problem is when that Asian guy sitting on stage kind of slouching in his chair saying it's programmable. And if you listen to what he says very closely, he's trying to put a positive spin on it. He's saying that it's programmable because we can give you food stamps there, we can give you welfare there, we can help you, and then we can get the money that government needs to get to the most vulnerable people in society. And if we don't like them, this is the part he doesn't say, we'll switch their money off.
There you go. Look, the most evil people in the world, even if we went back to Hitler didn't consider himself evil.
Yeah, exactly. He thought he was saving the world. He thought he was doing the right thing. Yeah. It's insane when you look at it like that. There's a version of it you may not know here in Australia, but there's a version of what you're describing here in Australia. So in Indigenous communities here in Australia, they have, it's a huge welfare state, right? So it's massive handouts. The governments have been giving handouts to them for the last 60 years. And nothing that the government does really seems to actually solve the problems of Indigenous poverty, Indigenous their health, their life expectancy, all of these things. And a lot of it's got to do with alcohol, and alcohol is a giant problem. And so instead of giving people cash to their bank account like they used to do back in the day, they give them a welfare card, and the welfare card can be spent like cash, just any other way, but you just can't spend it on booze. And recently they unlocked it and said, okay, go for it. You can buy whatever you want to buy now. And the place just fell apart. Literally fell apart. Crime went up, domestic violence goes up, sexual abuse goes up, all of these really negative aspects happen. But then the government realizes that they have to do something about it because the community is going, oh my God, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Don't you realize what's happening? And the government goes, click, switches it off, no more booze.
Love that. So, you know what? Since you brought that up, and by, this wasn't planned, people, but I've got a clip I want to show you real quick here, Rob.
Yeah, go for it.
Has your partner cut off access to your money? Do they control what you can and can't buy? Have they told you it's for your own good, that you've brought this upon yourself? If so, you might be in an abusive relationship. Unless, of course, it's us doing it to you, in which case you're on the cashless welfare card. Hello, I'm from the Australian government, here to introduce the cashless welfare, or as we like to call it, class warfare card. Soon to be rolled out nationally to everyone on income support, the class warfare card will quarantine most of your money so you can't spend it on alcohol, drugs, drugs, or gambling. Don't drink, do drugs, or gamble? That's okay. You're trying to access Social Security, so we want you to feel like a piece of shit. Class warfare card. Is it convenient? Not at all. Withdrawing cash at the ATM, $0. Trying to buy secondhand goods, $0. Shopping at the market, garage sale, tuck shop money for the kids. Nope. Losing your dignity and autonomy, priceless. Most things you won't be able to buy. For everything else, there's Class Warfare Card. Is it effective? Not according to our own research, which found little evidence that it reduces substance abuse or unemployment. In one trial, it even caused an increase in crime. Will we do it anyway? Of course.
I love Juice Media, man. They make me laugh like a couple of times a week.
So you seen that ad? Yeah.
I haven't actually seen that one. That's funny as hell.
That's the first one I came across that last night doing my research. I thought you might get a kick out of that.
Yeah, definitely. It really kind of highlights the hypocrisy of it. And right at the end there, she sort of says that none of that actually works. It doesn't work. Trying to cut people off from that actually increase crime because they got nothing to do. So they want to go around and run even more of a muck.
A government operation. I mean, what could go wrong? Right?
What could go.
Okay, listen. I've eaten into a lot of your time here. We need to get to our next topic before people turn off the channel here. So why don't we flip it over to you? Go and take it over, and let's talk about what are you going to talk about?
All right, let's give you a quick update on the war in Ukraine, folks. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and I'm going to share a couple of different websites with you to help you to understand exactly what's going on, because finance is a big thing that's going on in the world. There's a lot of news happening, but one of the biggest thing that's going on is what's actually happening over in Europe, because it does affect all of us. So over at this website here, and once again, as per all of our streams that we're doing and all of the content that we create, you can find all of the links in the description. So if you want to see these websites for yourself, all of the links will be down in the description. So this website is called -rus.com, and you can see the Russian losses that have actually happened over the last 12 months from the war. So it's a pretty horrific and harrowing thing that's actually going on. There's more than 184,000 people, according to the Ukrainians, that have been killed on the Russian side. And it's estimated that it's probably about 3 or 4 times that amount for the Ukrainians on the Ukrainian side of the ledger there, which is unbelievable when you look at it. So there's 900,000 troops in the Russian army, and they estimate that 184,000 and 553,000 have been killed or wounded. So that represents 82% of their forces that have been decimated. And that's why you're starting to hear about conscription. That's why you're starting to hear about what's actually happening in mainstream Russia. One of the things that they've been talking about is creating the digital version of the conscript. Once upon a time, they would have to go around and knock on your door and serve you with a piece of paper and go, "Oi, you've been conscripted, get down to the army barracks, off you go." They're not doing that anymore. What they're doing is they're tying it to your mobile phone. So you'll get a text message and go, "Oi, you've been conscripted, get your ass down the army barracks, off you go." So that's happening on the lowdown in Russia, and it's estimated that they've conscripted another 200,000 or 300,000 troops. The Russians have stopped the Wagner Group going to the prisons and extracting people from the prisons, and the Russian army are now doing that as well. So what I'm really afraid of, which is the next part of the presentation that I want to share with you, is actually what's about to happen. So there's been a lot of discussion in and around what's happening with the map here, what's happening with the counteroffensive. That's what's going on. We've reached a point of stalemate everywhere on this map, except in Bakhmut, and you've probably heard of that already. And we're just waiting for the ground to unfreeze itself and not be muddy slosh anymore, and have some summertime dirt that we can drive over with a 50-ton vehicle like a tank. That's the thing that's stopping. So this is Bakhmut itself. This is the city here where my mouse is going all the way around. You can see the Russians have encroached in. They got across the river there. They got through these natural obstacles, and really the last part here is Komatov here. If the Russians get this little intersection here and this junction here, it's all over for the Ukrainians in Bakhmut, because there's no more resupplies. But if they can hold on for another week or two, that won't actually matter, because the ground will be hard enough to resupply across here. But the problem is that if you scroll the map out a little bit, that's well within the range of the artillery and the Russian artillery on that side. And there's been a lot of destruction along this road. There's a lot of video around this road of vehicles and Ukrainian supply columns being completely destroyed and decimated by the Russians there as well. So I think we've got another week or so here before the Russians swallow it all up and they actually hold on to it. But if that's happening, I think we're seeing the final signs of weapon system delivery to the Ukrainians, and all of the tanks seem to be arriving to the Ukrainians, and they're preparing for the counteroffensive. And one of the things that I wanted to show you was some of the things that are actually happening. So, as we know, there's a lot of troops that have been trained in Poland, in other parts of Europe, in the UK as well. And here's some examples of that. You can see there's probably a couple of battalions worth of troops there. It's estimated that there's anywhere between 80 and 90,000 Ukrainians ready for this counterattack. Is that going to be enough troops? Is that going to be enough people to actually make it all happen? It may very well be. It may be decisive that we have the armor, we have the artillery, and we have everything ready to go to make all of that happen for ourselves. But the reality is, if they don't actually break through and get where they need to get to, then it's going to be a very, very big problem. Because if we come back to the map here, there's probably two places that we'll see this counterattack happen. And it's not going to happen over the south part here in Kherson because they just can't get across the river. There's no way to do it. So the only way they're going to cut Crimea off is if they take out the Kerch Bridge again. And now we've got the capacity to do that. And then they come back through the north here through Zaporizhia, take back the power plant there and divide this part of Ukraine in two. So they'll cut them off here from mainland Russia. They'll destroy the Kerch Bridge, and then they'll cut them off here and they'll try and retake Crimea. But the Russians are dug in here, and there's extensive forces in this part of the world. And I think that the biggest problem that we're going to face if they try and create a counterattack that comes to the south here to Melitopol, the problem that they're going to face is if this fails, the Russians are just going to absorb everything. They're going to absorb the Ukrainians. And if this doesn't go ahead and it doesn't work, then that's the end for Ukraine, because there is no more counterattack. There's no more soldiers. There's no more troops. There's no more people that can actually follow through and counter the Russians. So unless this counterattack actually works, it's the end for Ukraine. And I don't hear anybody talking about that. But at the same time, what I saw as a counter to that argument this morning, just before I came on to this call here with everybody, was Jens Stoltenberg, the boss of NATO, was in Ukraine today for the first time. And what he was saying was, and they said it, they've systematically taken these negotiating points off the table with the Russians. They've said that the Ukrainians will never join NATO. And NATO have said, well, Ukraine can't join NATO until the war is over. So that's not going to happen. So that negotiating point is gone away. But Stoltenberg has come out and said that what we're going to do is provide Ukraine with a security guarantee. And I think what they're doing is they're laying the foundations and they're laying the steps for NATO to go in there and actually shut this down and end it, in which case we're going to end up in a nuclear war, and CBDCs are not going to actually matter all that much, because that will then present an existential threat to the Russians. The Russians will do whatever they need to do to protect themselves, which means going up to and using nuclear weapons of all sorts. And I don't think the nuclear attack will happen necessarily on the territory of Ukraine. I think it will happen behind the lines of Ukraine and at the actual sources, and they'll try and take out the things that are causing their problems, the existential threat, because the threat is not in Ukraine, the threat is from NATO. So they'll take out all of those NATO bases and they'll use nuclear weapons to actually do that. It's a pretty scary proposition, folks, but unless this counterattack actually works, I can't see any foreseeable way that the Ukrainians are going to be able to shut down the Russians, albeit unless NATO get involved in this conflict. And I think that that's just a matter of time and a matter of course. I think by October, November this year, it'll either be over or NATO will be involved in that there. So I'm just going to stop sharing that screen, and I want to show you the result of actually what happens when the Russian combat power has such incredible losses. So this is a video from a channel that I watch all the time, and what they're doing is they're showing you here T-54 and T-55 tanks that the Russians are pulling out of storage, and that's what they're moving forward to the front line. It's unbelievable to think that the Russian combat losses are so heavy that they have to use technology that was created 70 years ago to actually solve the problems that they're facing. It is a scary proposition that this is what this is actually coming to. So do the Russians actually have the capability to keep moving forward and keep holding the ground? Well, when I see videos like this, I don't know what to think. Maybe there's thousands and thousands of these tanks that are in play, and maybe these tanks, some of them are just completely useless, or they use them for spare parts, or there's bits and pieces of them that they can use. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Russians have received exceptional losses. When you look at that Rush Minus website and you see the numbers of losses that they've faced in the armor side of things, has been unbelievable. So just coming back to that quickly, 3,667. So I lost 2 yesterday. So they've only got 3,300. So where are the other 600? So that's what we knew that they had. And so there's obviously another 300 that have been pulled out of storage that nobody knew about, but that's what's been destroyed on the battlefield as well. So according to these numbers, 100% of their armored brigades have been destroyed and their tanks have been destroyed, which is a scary proposition. And that's why we're seeing these types of videos where you're seeing this really old 1950s and 1960s technology. There's also footage going around of these Russians running around in World War II helmets and using weapon systems from World War II as well. Where is this all going? I don't really know. I think that the counteroffensive that's about to kick off in the next couple of weeks will be decisive, and that will determine the outcome of this conflict. I just want to share one more map with you, ladies and gentlemen, as you look. And once again, all of the links to this will be down in the show notes. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, just have a look at the show notes and you'll be able to see the links. This is called Eyes on Russia. This is a really interesting map. It's used as open source intelligence, and you can zoom into the map. And as you click around on the various different dots there, it gives you exactly what happened. You know, what is it that they saw? So a school was destroyed in that location. Here's the link to it. Here's the details of it. So somebody is taking the time, the painstaking time to put a map together like this to show you exactly what's going on in these places, which is an absolute travesty. It's an absolute shame that this is happening. But what can you do? This has been created and fed by the American government, unfortunately. And I really believe that what's happening here is the systematic destruction of the Russian economy. They're trying to bleed them dry. But I think that the Americans, unfortunately, the American politicians, that is, unfortunately, have made a categorical mistake. You're not going to bleed the Russians dry, and their ability to suffer losses is far greater than what we would have ever expected to. There's absolutely no way NATO, the United States, Australia, or anybody else would be able to put troops into a place like Ukraine and take losses on the scale of something like Vietnam. And in Vietnam, remember, there's about 50,000 people killed in Vietnam, but now we're seeing literally hundreds of thousands of people being killed in a war in Europe. This is unlike anything we've ever seen in our lifetime. We haven't seen anything like this really since World War I. World War II, the losses that were suffered there were nothing like this. It is unbelievable what's going on, and we're not counting the civilian losses or the loss of infrastructure or anything like that either. It's a pretty scary proposition. And what's going to happen? I don't really know. What I know is the counterattack is near. And what I do know for absolute certain, that unless this counterattack works, that's the end for Ukraine. And if the Americans don't want the end for Ukraine, they're going to have to get NATO involved in that. But I'm not even convinced that NATO is necessarily going to come along for the ride, because the support for it seems to be waning on a day-by-day basis, because I think everybody realizes that they've bitten off more than they can chew. What do you think, Ed? What are you hearing back home in the States there, mate?
First of all, great presentation. Unbelievable, very, very good. You're obviously the go-to person on this topic, but I do have strong opinions. I made kind of a controversial statement in one of our past videos about how I don't think that we should be involved at all in Ukraine. The idea of sending $100 billion to Ukraine, notoriously corrupt, probably the most corrupt country in Europe, and with no accountability. There's your money, and my solution to that is, well, look, you want toilet paper? We'll buy it for you and we'll send it to you. You need some bullets? We'll buy them for you and we'll send them to you. You just don't send money to a corrupt country. So a country, I don't know how much of that aid actually ended up going to the soldiers. I'm sure that there's going to be an expose 5 years from now about how many people made a lot of money, including a lot of our enemies probably made a lot of money. Probably a good amount of those $80 billion worth of military stuff we left in Afghanistan is probably ending up on the battlefield over there on the black market. This is a scandal any way you look at it, and we have a lot to be blamed for, in this. We've had our politicians come out and say on multiple occasions, including Biden himself, in freaking Ukraine when he was there, that there's we'll do whatever it takes. Well, what the hell does that mean? $1 trillion, $2 trillion, U.S. boots on the ground. What does that statement mean? Whatever it takes.
Can I make maybe a controversial statement as well? And I want you to push back on me here, right? Because I don't actually believe it's the politicians that are causing it. That's a big statement, right? The politicians are the ones that want it. Yeah. So Joe Biden saying, whatever it takes, we'll stay there, we'll help you. And every other idiot that's following him going, yeah, whatever it takes, we'll give him everything, And then they're arguing about how to pay for everything, right? So the politicians want to do it. But the only thing that enables it is the US Federal Reserve.
Amen.
They're the whole reason that this exists. And no one ever says that. No one ever talks about that because they don't understand that in order for all of that money, that gazillions of dollars that go over to Ukraine, it's not in some bank account. They go and print the money, borrow it as bonds, and then send it across to them. That's how it actually works. And a large percentage of it, surprisingly, Ed, is what you described. They give the money to Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or whatever defense contracting company there is, and they place the orders for the weapon systems and the weapons are delivered. But that's not actually true in all of the circumstance because they're now funding the Ukrainian pension system because the country's completely broke.
Yes, maybe too. Yes,
unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, we're broke. Our pension...
but you're funding somebody else out of the country's system. Like what?
Yeah, we're broke. We're having our social security system is on thin ice, and we just fully funded their pension system in Ukraine.
Yeah,
and I don't know, what do we get out of it? I mean, what do we get? What does America get out of this?
That's the biggest question I have as well. Here in Australia, there's something like 400 Hawkeye vehicles sitting in some warehouses here in Australia because there's some problems with them. Yeah, so the ABS on these vehicles is no good. And some of the pundits in the news media have said, well, why don't we take those vehicles and give all of them to Ukraine? So give 400 of these vehicles to Ukraine. They must be worth like 300, 400 grand each, right? Capable equipment. First world army, first world equipment. We've got the best of everything here in Australia. They don't spare any expense in that regard. It's pretty good. And they're like, why don't you fix them while they're in theater? And they're only driving at slow speed anyway. It's all right. The ABS problem they have is on the road and on the tarmac if you're driving at 80 Ks an hour, but they're not driving at 80 Ks an hour in the bush. They're driving around at 20 kilometers an hour in the scrub, right? Trying to be tactical and do that. But now we can move troops around the battlefield. And I'm thinking, yeah, really good idea. But if we take 400 vehicles out of storage and send them across there, imagine how much money that costs. It's the first thing. We pay for it as the taxpayers. At some point, that's going to come home to roost. And our grandkids are going to have to pay that through inflation. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is, if we give it to them, what are we going to get? Those vehicles are never coming back. That's the first thing. And the second thing is they're going to be destroyed on the battlefield. That's just the reality of it. So what do we get when we give that to them? Are we supporting? I'm not saying we shouldn't support them. I'm not saying that Putin was entitled to actually invade. But what I am saying is that if the Federal Reserve banks of the world, particularly in the United States, said, no, we can't give you money for that, none of this would be happening.
Listen,
that's who's encouraging it, man. That's why you should end the Fed, right? That's the hashtag, end the Fed.
Yeah, amen, brother. Listen, JP Morgan announced a $400 billion credit line to Ukraine.
Every other day, something like that's coming out, isn't it? I saw the European Union did one the other day as well for $100 billion. Unbelievable, man.
The IMF, there's money. People are making money on this. I mean, serious people. We're talking governments. We're talking, IMF. We're talking. There's lots of money at play here, and I can think of at least two reasons why the Pentagon is loving this war. Okay, first of all, they get a chance to practice warfare, because we haven't had a war for quite a while. So it gives them a chance to bone up on their warring skills, and they can do it with a proxy without having to use their own blood. We are using our treasure, or we're using someone else's blood. So that's one way. It's kind of practice for what could come with China. Hey, we're kind of getting up to speed on what's out there and what could happen. So this is kind of a practice, scenario for them. Another reason is they had all these bullets and mortars and HIMARS collecting dust in their, and now they're getting rid of those, and now they get to refresh their supply. Now they're ordering all these brand new ammo because they got to refresh it. Right now, if we had to go to war, we've depleted.
That's the Pentagon cheering, man.
Yeah.
That's John Kirby, man, at the lectern, like, come on, everybody, cheering. Yeah. And everybody else, like in the world, is going, no, that's all bullshit. We're not having it, man. Yeah. But you're right. It's unbelievable. There's a series of reasons that they do that. I saw a funny article the other day. It was yesterday, actually. I was sitting there on the couch at the end of the day, and I said to my missus, "Look at this," and it says the U.S. Air Force deploys 6 more AI-powered F-16s, and they use these things as training aids, right? And the AI is so sophisticated it can fly the fighter jet. Like, why don't you just give those to the Ukraine and then send them? At least no pilots are going to die. Like, it's unbelievable where the technology is going. I think that there's that famous Einstein quote. He says, "I don't know what weapons World War III will be fought with, but I know World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones."
Yeah.
And I tend to agree a little bit that we're in the last stages of warfare as it relates to modern humanity. This conflict we're seeing with Russia now, and the coming conflict that we see with China, that'll be the end of it. Beyond that, if you fast forward to 2050, I think we'll be living in more peace and security and harmony, unless we're all running around, with a loincloth and spears. That's kind of the alternative to what's actually going on. And it's perpetuated by idiot politicians and idiot leaders who think they know better than all of us. But none of that would happen if it wasn't for the fiat system that we live under. That's very strange.
Yeah. Useful idiots, right? Personally, I don't think the Ukrainian war is going to be over for years. I think the powers that be want this to go on for a lot of reasons. The idea of defense of democracy, come on, give me a break. Yeah, you're going to defend democracy. If you're serious about defending democracy, all sorts of other low-hanging fruit for you to worry about first before you worry
about. Why would you be in such a corrupt country?
Yeah. I think personally, I think that Putin trying. God knows I have no love for Putin. But listen, if I were in his shoes, listen. If Ukraine were to join NATO, now he's got NATO on his border. Ukraine served a purpose in that regard. They acted as a massive buffer.
That's what's happened today. That's what I'm saying is NATO is not going to join NATO, but NATO are going to give Ukraine a security guarantee, which is the same thing. If you under, it's the same as Australia coming under the American nuclear umbrella, because we're your closest allies. And here in Australia, we don't have nuclear weapons, but if someone attacked us with nuclear weapons, you would attack them on our behalf.
Yeah.
And if someone attacks you, we're with you, no matter what actually happens.
Now semantics, right? Now they're playing games with definitely. It's the same. The effect is the same, whether they're officially in NATO or it's just a security guarantee. So I think and just like, and now Ukraine by landmass is the largest country in Europe. So they served as a really nice buffer there between Russia. So that's why I always thought that Putin was never really interested in capturing all of Ukraine, because if he did, then he's got NATO on his border again.
He just wanted more of a buffer and a barrier.
My guess is where's most of the industrial output in Ukraine comes from the Donbass area. They're the eastern, we're just east of the Dnieper River there. That's where most of the industrial. Matter of fact, in Soviet era they had a massive tank producing factory there in Dnieper. or Dnipropetrovsk, whatever it's called. So a lot of their manufacturing work was in Ukraine, in the eastern part there, the eastern sliver there. So, if I had to guess, if there were to be this might sound naive, but I think if there were an actual serious peace negotiation, I'd offer some. Tell you what, we'll give you everything east of the eastern side of the Dnieper River of Kiev. You take that, and then the rest of it. I don't know, something like that. He might be able to. But there are no serious. This idea, if you give him an inch, you'll take him out. Listen, the borders in Europe have been changing for hundreds of years.
In the last 50 years, they've changed plenty as well. And to your point, everybody listening to that would go, "Oh, you're a Putin apologist. It's all right. You let him take the ground and hold the ground." But the reality is, at some point, it has to end. Otherwise, it's never going to end. And it comes down to this very. Let's round out this little bit, and we'll throw to you for the last part of the show, Ed. It's very easy for a politician to start a war because they don't actually hold a rifle or go on the front line. It's not their problem. They don't care. They've got people there to do that for them. But the reality is, it's nearly impossible to end a war. And here we are seeing the same things play out again and again. It was very easy to go into Afghanistan and take down the Taliban and try and get rid of bin Laden, which they did pretty quickly. And then, okay, we did that. Now what? Oh, well, let's go to this nation state building. Same in Iraq. We went there. We rolled up the Iraqi military pretty quickly. We didn't get Saddam straight away. We got him pretty soon after. Now what? Oh, well, let's kind of de-Baathification of Iraq and let's go rebuild a country. It's very easy to start it and to go and do that and to invade and to make all of those things happen, but it's next to impossible to get out of it. And the Russians are facing that exact thing right now. It's very easy for them to start, but nearly impossible to extract themselves. And it's easy for the Ukrainians to defend themselves because they can stay there forever, but we're not going to support them forever. That's what they don't understand. And unless this counteroffensive actually works, that's going to be the end for Ukraine. And I suspect that we're on the precipice of the end. Hopefully I'm wrong. I never wanted to be more wrong about any of this, but as I look back at the things that I've said in the last 12 months about the war, I've been consistently right about those things. And I'm not trying to say that I'm some sort of savant or some sort of prophet about these things, but all I know is the history of warfare. And when you go down these paths, it's very, very difficult to extract yourself. So that's good. Why don't we round out this show, Ed, with some more fun stuff. You got a little presentation on SpaceX I'm going to throw to you.
Okay. Well, first, what I'd like to do is start out with a little clip that I left off of my CBDC. I know I'm out of order here, but this is a fun little clip. This is a clip from I believe it's a Netflix series. Maybe you guys in the comment can tell me what the name of the show is. I think it's Omeletto, but I'm not sure. But I found it in my research last night, and I thought it showed us, and I did edit it down quite a bit because there was a lot of stuff in there. But I thought, well, let's keep it short. So let me show you this clip because I think, I don't just think, this is the world we are heading toward if we don't stop this move toward CBDCs. Let's take a look.
15 years. Great to see you, Frank.
Welcome to Utopia 76.
I can't wait to see Margaret. What a beautiful day.
Processing. GPS coordinates confirmed.
What on earth are you doing?
I'm starting the car. What do you think I'm doing? What the? Did you throw out any rubbish?
No, of course not.
Is that yours?
Hey, it's my bandana. It must have fallen out of my pocket. So what? What are you doing?
I'm looking for a credit card.
A credit card? What for?
The car won't start unless I pay the fine. Now you understand?
Anyway, who fined you? I didn't see any cops.
There are no cops. Anyone can find you.
Gee, things have changed a bit.
We hardly noticed.
What do you think of that, Rob?
Oh my God, you've got you've got the best B-roll clips ever, man. That is like absolutely that's hilarious, man. I used to think that Australians were, tough, knockabout, Aussie blokes, that played football and drank beer and did all of that. But you know what COVID showed me? A bunch of rule-following, government-obeying sooks. And it's unbelievable how many people capitulated to what the government wanted us to do. And what that guy said there right at the end is that is exactly what Australian society has become. Oh, yeah, we just didn't even notice. Yeah, it's all right, whatever. If they want us to do that, we'll do that, whatever. It's like that she'll be right attitude stays, but it stays in the face of tyranny and absolute tyranny by the fools that run this government here in Australia. It's unbelievable. That is accurate.
But this is not crazy stuff. This absolutely,
no, that's real.
This is the road we are going down.
Yep.
And complacency is what's going to get us there really fast. That people, how many people know about CBDCs? It's got to be less than 10%. It's got to be less than, 5%.
Yeah, exactly.
But come this summer, boy, there's gonna be some kind of rude awakening, man. So I want everyone, people, as far, in my opinion, outside of a shooting war with either China or Russia or both, this is the most important issue for us to worry about. The CBDC is just emblematic of the kind of world we're going toward, and the way who is it said the only thing that evil needs to succeed is for good men to do nothing, and that's what we are doing collectively. Is we are doing nothing. We're letting things happen. The first thing you have to do is be aware of it, because the media is not going to fill you in on this stuff. So, but Rob and I are. So make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you watch this frequently, because we're going to be telling you the unspoken truth.
There it is, baby. That is the unspoken truth right there. Right there.
All right. So a little more lighthearted news, and it is kind of an important topic for me. So today was an important day with SpaceX. So SpaceX announced they launched their ship, and let me show you the clip, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
The thrust of the Saturn V heading to space.
Acquisition signal, please proceed.
We're throttled down and throttled back up. The entire Starship stack continuing to rotate. We should have had separation by now. Obviously, this does not appear to be a nominal situation.
Yeah, it does appear to be spinning, but I do want to remind everyone that everything after clearing the tower was icing on the cake.
Okay. Rob, you know what I love about that was the cheering at the end, and I'll tell you why. Now, yeah, it blew up. The cheering, probably not really good news if you're planning on being a passenger in one of those things.
No.
But when it was spinning there, I was wondering, is that what it's supposed to do? It's spinning. No one's saying anything.
But not connected. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the mission was for it to come back down to Earth and land. That was this test to see whether they could land the guy
and catch it.
And capture it. But what I like about this event is that they were cheering on the explosion because it was a successful mission in a lot of ways. They collected a lot of data. This is how America was made great, in my opinion, where people who were willing to take risks to make that next big step for humanity. And the fact that so this is going to be a little bit of hope, a little corner of the world of what's going on out there. I think we should celebrate this as a little modicum of what the human spirit is supposed to be. Reaching for something bigger, going for something bigger. And this is the first time we've been an attempt into outer space. But Musk's the idea of building a society on the moon, and then from there using that as a launch pad to go to Mars, and the idea that you can build massive spaceships on the moon, because from there it doesn't have to leave the Earth's atmosphere, so you can build massive spaceships. This is Star Trek type stuff. You have masses, so but the ambitions are huge. Even if we don't achieve everything, the fact that we are shooting for the stars, to borrow a phrase, that's how you move humanity forward. Is instead of bickering over whether your kid is a boy or a girl or not, let's try to do things that's actually going to move mankind forward. So what do you think?
Well, there's you can sum up what happened to them today by saying that famous statement by NASA have said it for decades: space is hard. It is the hardest thing that people try and do, and it's the most dangerous thing that people try and do as well. I'm not entirely convinced that that's actually the way to get out of the atmosphere anymore. There's other ways to do that. There's new engine technology that's on the horizon that will make rocket type propulsion not redundant, but it certainly makes it much easier to access space. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd encourage you to go and look at reaction engines. So they're the people that have figured out how to. They're the people that have figured out how to actually create ballistic aircraft to get you out of the atmosphere.
I'm sure everyone's scrambling now to find videos.
We'll get them in the link, and that's fascinating stuff, right? Well, here's the thing: it's the unspoken truth, right? Because you've never heard of reaction engines before, and it doesn't get any press, it doesn't get any media because Elon Musk gets all the press and media. But the reality is, the airliners that we see today, the 787 Dreamliner and the A350 Airbus, they're the last of their generation. And that's because the engine technology that reaction engines are about to bring to market, and the technology that Sonic are bringing to the market as well, makes all of the airline technology redundant. And the safety is the same. Everything, there's a process there. But if you could fast forward 20 years into the future, does an airliner look like a 787 now? No, it doesn't. It looks very different.
I meant this to be more of a philosophical segment about mankind reaching for something bigger than themselves. And
totally, man, totally. And that's such an important topic, and it's such an important thing. With all the doom and gloom that we face in the world, with the war in Russia and the war with China and all the things that are going wrong, there's still literally millions of people on planet Earth working towards a better future for us. And I think it's really important that you focus some of your attention on those things and be wowed and awe-inspired by that. I'm wowed and awe-inspired by the reaction engines stuff because I'm an aviator and I love everything to do with aviation. And so for me, that's it's a really inspiring thing. And I spent a lot of time looking at that engineering and, see how new engine technologies that hydrogen-powered engines that Toyota have created in the last couple of years are going to make electric cars completely redundant. And all of those things are just amazing. And, I believe climate change is all garbage, but the reality is we could do better than fossil fuels, and there's no reason not to try and not to do that.
Well, we're definitely going to be doing a full segment on that topic. The idea because yes, the EVs, it is a scam. The material that goes into those batteries are toxic, and they're non-recyclable, and they cost about, the battery alone costs almost as much as a car itself. And meanwhile, we have hydrogen. We have other technologies that are better than that stuff. So there is an agenda. It's an agenda-driven industry. Anyway, so I'm going to ask for a little personal forgiveness out there for you guys. This is our first attempt here at a video. So anybody's watching this, you are watching the version, what is it, the
inaugural episode.
Yeah. And so if we were a little wordy, it's because we're so enthusiastic about this. We're really looking forward. We'll try to be more disciplined going forward, keeping because we know YouTube audiences tend to have a short, but you can fast forward and we'll cut it up for you. But thank you for everyone who listened and who tuned in. A special shout out to my friends on WhatsApp. Hey guys, how you doing? See you soon. See you. And so Rob, thank you so much for organizing this and being my partner in this. And boy, I am so thrilled with this new venture.
I knew this was going to go and work a treat, and we had no problems really with the technology. We're a bit slow on the clicking a little bit, and there's some funny looks there on the screen, but I'm sure people will forgive us for all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're hearing on today's show, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to leave some comments below. If you're listening to this as a podcast, make sure you just take a second there to pop it open and subscribe to the show as well. That way you'll never miss an episode. You'll always have some unspoken truth in your ears. If you've got some feedback for Ed and I, please reach out to us. You can connect with me on Instagram. You connect with Ed via email and on his YouTube channel over at Hey Ed. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, all the links will be right there down below in the description. So make sure you reach out. If you've got an idea for the show or you want to come on and do an interview with us, make sure you reach out as well. We'd love to see you. But for today, that wraps it up. Thanks, Ed. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
All right, good night, mate.
We can fly. Oh, we could fly. I'm an animal. Give me a color, give me a leash. They tell me I'm in trouble, but I'm begging, give me a treat. So see you you're a hologram walking the streets, disappearing. I got a remedy.